like out there in the world.
Do you understand our music?
You are now tuning in to another episode of Gnosian Music Edition, where we venture into the secret corners of the world in search for the unknown artists to hear their music and their story.
That's the beauty of music. They can't get that from you.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thank you for joining me to another episode of the Gnosian Journals Music Edition. In today's episode, we're going to have my good friend Carlos Ordiano. Carlos is a jazz pianist from Orange County, California, more specifically Santa Ana, California. Here you will get to listen to Carlos talk about his upbringing in Santa Ana, his influences as a musician, and the new projects and works that he's working on at the moment. You will also get to hear 4 of his original compositions. Now, just to let you know, this episode will be split in 2 sections, part 1 and part 2. So make sure at the end of the episode to click on part 2 to listen to the rest of the conversation and to listen to the 2 extra performances by Carlos Ordiano. With that being said, I hope you enjoy the conversation, and I'll see you in the next one. How's it going, everyone? We are here with Carlos Ordiano, a good friend of mine. Hey, Carlos, can you introduce yourself?
My name is Carlos Ordiano. I play piano. I've been playing for about 30 years, and I live in Southern California.
Awesome. So what kind of music do you play?
I play a hybrid of jazz and whatever music that jazz harmony gets applied to. So like Latin music or pop music or sometimes South American music.
How long have you been playing music? At what age did you start?
In my childhood, when I started piano, I started around age 8. And my first piano teacher was a classical pianist. And he taught me with music, but I was just not reading. I was just following.
Oh, so you never took classical really seriously?
I wouldn't say I didn't take it seriously. It was difficult for me at the moment. I had a short attention span. I probably still do.
Yeah, you just like to improvise instead.
Yeah, immediately.
So you didn't like your classical training. So how did you get in? How did you keep going with music? What kept your interest going?
When my dad saw that when I was 8 years old that it wasn't going well, and the instructor said, he's like, I don't know how to fix this problem. So we stopped the lessons, and later my brother Ruben, he started wanting to get lessons, and that's when we started again about a year later. But this time we went the music way through rote. So what that means is he found a musician that taught music, but he taught us by ear, not with music. So we just learned the basics of music, like major and minor scales and major and minor chords, and learned everything to memory by ear.
Just for some that don't know about major and minor, can you just give us a quick example of what major and minor means?
So that's major, that's minor. Learning that around age 9 or 10 in every key helped me, because it was like a solid foundation to build when I got into college and learned about jazz.
But not only that, I'm assuming your ear really got, it got a lot of work done.
Yeah, because we learned everything, we committed everything to memory. Or I did. We just learned everything by rote. Like he would teach me, and I didn't learn the correct fingerings, but I knew what the correct scales were.
Hey, at this point in your life, you were how old?
I was 10.
You were 10 years old?
I started around 9. So by the time I started getting a solid understanding and memorization of everything, I was around 10 years old.
Oh, okay. And then after that, what kept you going? Did you perform?
We learned. Oh, sorry to interrupt. When he taught us the basics of music, but at the same time we were also learning very simple songs, like mostly like cumbias and rancheras. So we would always follow the melody, or the singer.
So because me and Carlos are from Santa Ana here in Orange County, and it's a very Latin-driven society here. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming you had a lot of the Latin influence, obviously.
Yeah, my parents, that's what they listened to. So because of our parents, they wanted to hear that music, and they're paying for the lessons. They're like, well, you're going to learn Los Tigres del Norte, Los Bookish, Temerarios, like a lot of grupero music. That's around the late 80s,
And so from there, did you start performing when you were young, or did you just practice at home and eventually you led into, you know, a band or something? What did you do to get you into performing?
Around the same time that I was performing there with, we were getting lessons at this music store that used to be on 4th Street in Santa Ana. It's called Pedrini's, and the instructor's name was Ramiro Contreras, and he played guitar in a band. But we never went to see him. But he taught there, and he played a little bit of everything. So my uncle Mauro wanted to be in the band, and we wanted to be in a band, and so we went with Ramiro. But what the cool thing was that once we started getting good enough to play, we started learning songs and playing together as a band, as a unit, as a family band. So when the opportunity came that we had at least 5 or 6 songs ready to play, we were playing New Year's, we were playing birthday parties in the family.
Yeah.
In the family.
So these first 6 songs that you learned, what style of music was it?
Cumbias, grupero, instrumental cumbias.
Grupero, what is that?
Like los Bookish, los Temerarios.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I know as a grupo.
Romantic.
From the 80s. So we would just practice that music, but we were also listening to like everything on the radio, and it was.
And then just do a bunch of house parties, I'm assuming.
House parties playing cumbias and stuff.
Yeah, and again, you were what age at this point?
So I was like 11 or 12 by then.
11 or 12.
Yeah.
So you guys are already good enough to start performing.
Yeah. By that point, we.
So you picked up pretty fast after you started doing this new method.
Yeah, relatively fast, and it was fun too because it was a group. It wasn't so isolated.
Yeah.
It wasn't so by yourself.
So again, you had this whole training of pretty much ear training and, you know, do as I do, pretty much.
Yeah.
When did that move forward into note reading and learning how to actually learn music?
Okay.
By learn music, I mean music notation.
Right. I understand. So with that knowledge, major and minor in all 12 keys, major scales, like basic, which Spanish we call círculo, or like 1-4-5, but in every key, it's called primera, segunda, tercera, and then there's preparación to go to segunda. So primera, segunda, primera, preparación, segunda. So
yeah,
later I found out once I got into college that that's 1-4-5.
Oh, okay. So you didn't actually study music, study it, not in the sense just practice it, but actually study it until you got into college?
College, yeah.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much my story too.
Mm-hmm.
And so did you study music in school? Yeah, you did, right?
Yes. When I got into coming out of high school, I wasn't good enough to play in the band because I didn't read music, but also they didn't have piano in the high school band, and because I wasn't good enough, so I wasn't really seen as a pianist.
You weren't good enough
to play piano.
Mm-hmm. For high school.
For high school, yeah, because there wasn't a piano class, so I wasn't able to read, or because they needed a pianist that could accompany the choir, but I wasn't proficient in music.
Yeah.
Reading. But I could pick up everything pretty fast by ear.
Yeah. So you went into college and you wanted to study music, or you didn't study music until later, right?
Yeah. Upon graduating high school, I went to Golden West Community College in Huntington Beach, and I got into the recording engineering program because it's something that was related to music, because I wasn't seeing music as I completely understood like what music was as far as being a well-rounded musician, like being able to read and write music and then perform. So I was only used to performing and very simple music, so it wasn't very complicated, but I've been doing it for like 10 years already by the time I got into college. So when I got into college, I was working on getting my recording engineering degree, or certificate actually, because it's a 2-year community college. So the first year was very exciting because I was like learning, but I also found out it was kind of boring for me, because I saw how much fun the guys on the recording side, on the band side, they were having. They were like laughing.
Making the music.
The ones making music were having fun and cracking jokes and playing, and they were playing like jazz and stuff. Here's a side note on when I got to understanding what jazz was in college. I looked back in my life and realized that I've been listening to it since I was a kid because of the music that was on television. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood had a jazz piano trio, which was a great piano trio, and that's what I grew up on. But I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. So the sound and the language was in my head. I just didn't associate the name.
So, because when I think of you, when I met you, I knew you as a jazz pianist. Mm-hmm. So, when did you start playing jazz? Because I was under the assumption that you started way early with classical and jazz.
I started playing jazz when I was like 18. I started studying music when I was 17, and luckily for me at Golden West College, I worked with Jerry Schrader, who's a jazz pianist, and Tom Kubis, who was a pianist, saxophonist, and composer and arranger. So they're great guys. You know, they work with everybody they wanted to work, and Jerry Schrader was like, "Hey, you sound pretty good. Why don't you try working on these voicings, learn these chords, and memorize this?" And I said, "Okay." You know, I didn't think anything except this is way more challenging than cumbias.
What you were up for. You were actually looking into that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. I mean, I liked it. When I heard the jazz combo playing, I was like, wow, what's going on here? Like, what key is it in? And he said, oh, the A is in C and the B is in E flat. I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but
oh no, go ahead.
But my curiosity was like, well, what do I do? How do I do this?
Yeah, and so that's where you started. You just ran with jazz.
Jerry was like, okay, well, to understand this, you need to work on these things and figure out your voicings, because I played everything in root position pretty much. So then he introduced me to inversions. Mm-hmm. So having a solid foundation of understanding the chords and how they're constructed, getting the inversions actually came really fast to me because I understood the root position of it.
Just for those that don't know what inversion means, can you give us a little example or description of what that is?
Yeah, like a triad in root position is, so that's C, E, G. Now an inverted C, E, G would be, and then inverted again would be, and then again. That's just a root position, a simple triad getting inverted.
So you're just putting the... Hey, how's it going, everyone? So I just wanted to give you a quick explanation of what an inversion is. An inversion is when you take a root position chord, a standard chord, and invert it. For example, a root position is a chord with the main note on the bass. If you look at the example above or here, you see that the C chord, which has the notes C, E, and G, the very bottom note is a C note. That makes it a root position C chord. In inversion, though, we change the bass note. So if you look at the first inversion, that bass note, the bottom note, is an E now. That makes it a first inversion. A second inversion is when you take the G of the C chord and put it on the bass. This makes it a second inversion. Now, it's a little tricky to understand if you don't know theory, but just know that an inversion is when a chord does not have the main or the root note in the bass. Here is Carlos Ordiano with his original composition, Bookish.
Bookish! This is a good one.
Okay, cool. So you started doing jazz, and you ran with it, but you never stopped playing the cumbias and the traditional
No,
Latin stuff.
actually, taking that jazz harmony, I started applying it to what we already knew. So what I already knew. So it took my basic playing and made it more interesting for me, more complicated. I mean, more challenging for me because I had more possibilities to incorporate into music. But because of the newfound knowledge, I was aware to more complicated music. So I started to listen to more intense music. So one of the things that I did was buy my first jazz CD, which was Branford Marsalis, and the album was Crazy People Music, and that was super cool. And I think another one that I bought was John Carter and Bobby Bradford and Horace Tapscott, and they had a two album compilation called West Coast Hot, which was free jazz, and it was very intense. I actually got a headache, but I forced myself to listen to it because I was like, I want to understand this, and that was my introduction to my very first jazz album.
Okay. Yeah, and who introduced this to you?
I just went to the record, like, you know, back then you could go into a CD, walk into something, and I said, I want this and I want this. It just names that I had heard. I'm like, okay, but Horace Tapscott was just not a common thing. Like, he's from the 60s.
Oh, okay.
And Bradford was pretty relevant. He's like,
So
he's been around forever.
So who were your biggest influences then, and are they still your influences now? Jazz musicians.
When Jerry introduced me to what to check out, you know, it was like Miles, John Coltrane, Bill Evans, Duke Ellington, McCoy Tyner, Chick Corea. Yeah. And I liked it. Like, it was interesting to me, and it felt good to listen to, and I wanted to play that way.
Okay, and that then and
when I was 18, 19.
You still look into them, you know, as influences?
Oh yeah, they're still big influences now.
Yeah. But you know, now you don't only play jazz. I mean, you still have pretty much everything you do is still jazz based around it, but you do a lot of South American stuff, Latin jazz,
and salsa, Afro-Cuban, Afro-Caribbean, and then just hybrids thereof. One thing that I'm grateful for was playing in Golden West College and also in Santa Ana College, where I met David Lopez, and we were doing the Latin Jazz Ensemble, which pretty much got created around the time we were attending.
Well, that's where I met you. I met you at Santa Ana College, and I remember thinking that you were faculty because I would see the jazz combo perform, and you were the pianist for that. But it turns out that you didn't even have your bachelor's yet.
No. Yes. I had a lot of experience by that point. I think I was in my mid-20s, but I was playing all the time. So what I did is I just became obsessed with learning how to read and write. So every time I would get a chance to, I would sign up for a band, or I would work with a band that had music just to work on that craft. Oh, okay. Now you're mostly a gigging musician, or do you do anything else aside from gigs? Gigs, recording, composing, arranging, and transcribing for different people. Like right now I have this big project I'm transcribing for a friend of mine that he has an orchestra arrangement, and he lost his charts, so now I'm having to retranscribe his recording, his demo, and putting it into notes. And then another friend of mine is having me just put his songs into a lead sheet form, like, you know, melody and chords. And another friend of mine, we're working and co-writing actually, and coming up with cool hybrids of music, like Latin melodies with jazz harmonies, or like Latin or like Latin-esque based music with R&B type components or neo-soul components. And talking about orchestrations and arranging, you just maybe about a year and a half ago, you had a big commission to orchestrate or arrange music for a pretty well-known group. Can you talk to us about that? Yeah, that was La Marisol and the Love Notes Orchestra. We actually, I know the percussionist and the bassist. Growing up and playing in every band that I could, we met, you know, on doing random gigs and cool guys. We got along, and they went on to form La Santa Cecilia, and they have, they're Grammy winners, and they've done their thing. So recently they released a couple of albums that use more keyboards. So they reached out and said, hey, Carlos, we need a keyboard player. You want to do it? I said, sure, let's do it. And going on the road, I met Marisol and Pepe and Marco, the guitarist. And on this tour was Abe. And we got to talking, and then I was talking about the big band. Actually, the percussionist, Miguel also, he played on that. I did a 14-piece big band, and my grandfather's from the era of it was like in the 40s and 30s and 50s. Well, actually 40s and 50s. And so danzones were pretty popular. So it was like a lot of wind instruments. So it was like a danzón music, like Cuban influenced big band type music in Mexico.
Yeah.
So I thought for his birthday, I would transcribe like 2 sets worth of that music, and it was like clarinet, saxophones, trumpets, trombones. So specifically, it was 2 trumpets, 2 trombones, 5 saxophones, and two of the saxophones would double on clarinet, and then percussion and rhythm section. So it'd be bongo, conga, timbal, bass, and piano. So I was telling Marisol on one of our trips, I go, hey, I did this, and maybe check it out, see if you like it. And on one of the breaks, I got that band together, and we rehearsed, and I said, hey, check it out, come and check out the rehearsal and see what you think. So she recorded our rehearsal, and I told her, I'd do a little arrangement for her, see what she thought. And I started, I think it was called Bonita, and she liked it, and she recorded it and sent it to her manager. So that was around January, and in January, she sent it to her manager. Her manager reached out to me. He liked it, and he said, "Oh, we have this concert coming up. Would you like to do it? It's in February. Can you get it together?" And we just chose the music, and I transcribed as fast as I could, and arranged. I spent all of January sitting down and writing. That was like in 2020, was it? It was 2020.
No, because 2020 was. No. Yeah, you're right. It was early 2020.
2020 in January.
Yeah, before closing down.
And then we performed February, and then the pandemic happened in March.
Yeah. So you just squeezed that one in.
They turned that into an album. They
Yeah.
turned those concerts into an album, so you can check them out. It's called Love Marisol and the Love Notes Orchestra.
With that group, they play a lot of boleros, a lot of the same style as you do.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it lended itself because it's a lot of Latin based, like a lot of bolero stuff, and it's really cool because it lends itself, like the Santa Cecilia plays like cumbias and norteñas, and this hybrid of what it is. It's a hybrid of music that's popular here in Southern California, which is very eclectic. And
Yes.
a lot of people take music from here and here and mix it together.
Put it together, yeah.
And you get these hybrids. And Santa Cecilia, they were able to do that with a lot of their music. So it's like a fusion of ska and rock, like they do their own thing, boleros, and people that are kind of like on the same. Like they can go through all that music and not even think it's weird, because it's something that they also grew up with.
Since we're talking about all these styles of music, can you show us maybe the subtle differences between, let's say, bolero, cumbia, salsa?
Okay.
Just a few measures of each to see if we could distinguish it, because a lot of people, they can't hear the difference between salsa and cumbia, for example. Since they are 2 styles of music that are usually played back to back.
Yeah. So like a cumbia, it's just, or faster, or even faster. Or actually, that's the same tempo, but it has like a montuno, or even faster. So what happens if you play it faster? It's kind of like a mambo. But that's different because it's syncopated. That would be like more Cuban, more son. A bolero would be.
salsa? What about
Salsa?
Yeah. Awesome. So with all this happening there with the rhythm, because it's all rhythmic driven, right? Music.
Yeah.
You have jazz, and then you have Latin jazz. Can you give us an example of just something that's jazz? And I know jazz is very broad, but then something that is Latin jazz, and if we could hear the difference between those two.
So jazz, like let's say a blues, or actually. It's like a D minor modal type of thing, but here's like a more jazz walking bass line. It's like Killer Joe. It's just two chords. Well, the beginning is. So now if I take the same thing and add Latin to it, same chords but different approach.
So it's really the rhythm that makes it the Latin.
That makes it, yeah. And then it's more defined with drums and percussion. You want a break for the weed whacker?
No, it's okay.
You like it?
Yeah. Is it getting closer to us?
Yeah, I can hear it right by the door.
Okay, we'll take a little break right there because we're reaching. We're reaching 25 minutes anyway, so we could get a break. Hey everyone, so this is the end of part 1 of Carlos Ordiano. Make sure to click on part 2 to listen to the rest of the conversation and to hear 2 more performances by Carlos. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in part 2. Here we have Carlos Ordiano performing one of his other original works, Chamba. Enjoy. Chamba.